Hey Liz, welcome back. We're going to do a Spark Short today.
Oh, I love Spark Shorts. What are we
Yeah.
going to talk about?
I thought we could talk about, what everybody else in the world is talking about, AI.
Ah, one of my favorite topics.
Or food. And, I'm definitely not an expert in this area. Are you an expert in this area?
I am not an expert, but I invest in a lot of artificial intelligence companies, so I do know quite a lot about the topic.
Awesome. Well, then maybe you can teach me a little bit. I'm using it maybe a little bit beyond like beginner. Maybe early amateur is what I would say, but I aspire to continue to get better at it. I mean, I think I'm really good at it, and then I see what other people are doing. I'm like, oh, I like maybe but I want to be an early adopter because that's the direction we're going.
Yeah.
So maybe you can start. How are you using AI now, Liz? And what do you know about it? Why are you investing in these companies? And what can you tell us that I might not know or that our listeners might not know?
Well, what I can say is that the technology is not new technology. It's been around for a long time. It just finally hit that cycle of all technology where it is sort of reinventing itself at a much faster pace. Like we describe it as being on the flywheel, right? Like once you get hit the flywheel moment, then that loop is just building and building and building, right?
Yeah.
And so artificial intelligence, most people use it like Google, right?
Mhm.
Like a search engine.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, and I don't think most people realize this, it takes 17 times more computing power to do an artificial intelligence search than it does to do a Google search. So when people put in, hey, ChatGPT, what do you think I should have for dinner tonight? They're using 17 times more energy than they would if they had put that same thing into Google.
So what's the impact of that?
Well, the impact of that is we're going to need all energy sources. So, a, a year or so ago, the focus was really moving towards green energy. And I would say now the focus is moving to all energy because the demand for AI in both business and personal use is it is so great. And I'm going to get this number wrong, but it's something like, gosh, I wish I had prepared for this. I would have had the figures, but I want to say that in 2030, so like 4 years away, um, uh, there are going to be something like 3 trillion AI searches. Like, I mean, the level of use is just immense.
Sure.
And so that's why you have things like nuclear energy coming on board. You have wind and solar, obviously. You have all fossil fuels. One of the things that I don't think people realize is artificial intelligence is really critical on geopolitical issues.
Okay.
So the Russian-Ukrainian war, part of that war was based on some natural resources that Ukraine has in great abundance that Russia wants for AI purposes.
Mm.
Um, China and the United States are in a tariff war largely because over the last many years, China has secured both um, internally, domestically, and around the world the rights to 98% of the rare earth metals in the world. And whoever owns the rare earth metals um, will have the capability from a defense standpoint um, to to control essentially the globe. And so it's quite serious. this sort of fight for rare earth metals because it's a national defense issue and a national security issue. And so the stakes are quite high. And I don't think anybody's really, I mean, folks like me who read
It's helping me write my emails, you know? It's like
so that's one side of
Mhm.
AI. The You're starting to see great productivity with the use of AI and its early innings in businesses, and unfortunately, that's also putting pressure on the job market because people graduating from college today, a lot of the work that you would have done as a recent college graduate and how you would have learned is now being done by AI.
Mhm.
And so you're seeing a slowdown in the hiring of college graduates.
Yeah.
So, so that's something that we're going to have to face. And then you're seeing layoffs pretty substantially in areas like call centers and things like that, where you have what they call agentic artificial intelligence doing the work of, a call center employee. So I had a dinner over the summer with somebody who sits on the board of a medical device manufacturer, and they have a call center, and they have 2,000 employees. And he said they expect that half of those employees will not be with the company within the year
Wow.
because their job will be able to be done um, cheaper and more efficiently by artificial intelligence.
Wow. Wow.
And you're seeing that all across the board. Amazon, Meta, I mean, every company in the world is laying off jobs.
Yeah. Anybody who has kids going into college, I keep asking them, what are they going to study? Because have you considered AI? Because I think we're in that transitional zone where I don't think all the kids who are going to study at college these days are yet thinking about that. I think some are, some of the
Mhm,
parents are, some of the teachers are, but I think we're in that zone where it's like there's still so many kids going into fields that I'm not 100% sure they're going to be here in 10 years,
mhm,
and it's something that we really need to be thinking about now, right? My one son is a senior in high school, and it's something we've been giving a lot of thought to, and so he wants to go into physical therapy. He wants to be a physical therapy assistant. I'm like, well, that seems pretty good for the
yeah,
foreseeable future, right?
right,
People, I think, will always want human contact when it's about health and getting better, to some extent. But who knows, Liz? I don't know what is really safe. But these conversations, one of the everything you just said from the geopolitical aspect is so interesting, and the energy and the ways that those things are impacting us, because I think there's a lot of exciting things that AI is doing, but then we need to look at these other sides and say, well, what's it doing, to politically, and to what's happening that's dangerous and not, um, and then the energy that it needs. Like we're feeling that right here, at least in my little corner of the world. There's a small town nearby called Archbold, and they want to bring in a ton of data centers, right next to homes and neighborhoods. And so it's like anything else. It's about what's the right location for these things, right?
right.
We need them, and if we're going to have them, and if there's a reason to have them, then they should be going in the right locations, I'm not sure that's like right next to these communities, that you know where it's not really bringing in all the jobs that they say that's going to bring. But I'm just saying there's a whole nother aspect to AI, that we need to consider, which is, where do the data centers go? Where's the right location for the data centers? Where are the right, and why? Does temperature comes into effect? There's a lot of cooling that's necessary. You need a certain amount of land. You need to be by the power sources. You need tons of water. Like,
Mhm,
so how we feed this is important. You keep talking about rare earth metals. I'm like, which metals and how much of those do we have? How much more can be
Mhm.
extracted? I know there's stuff happening on the moon. I don't want to get into that because I'm not 100% sure what's going on up there yet. But um, and then there's the how we're using. So there's the impact on the job market. There's the socio political. There's the environmental.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that this is coming into play and so fast. And there's so much that we could say about this. It could probably go on for hours, but the people who are saying it, I think, at the most elevated level. There's a podcast that I love called Diary of a CEO with Stephen
Mhm.
Bartlett. And that's at least, I'm sure there's many podcasts covering these topics, but he has had all of the leaders in AI, almost all of them on his podcast to talk about what does this mean, right?
Mhm.
What's good about it? What's frightening about it? You
Mhm.
know, and there are a lot of like we all know there's a lot of super exciting stuff, the things that AI can do and the ways I'm employing it now that just blow my mind and are so helpful to me in my business are exciting. And then, they're talking about, and this isn't sci-fi, that they're talking about that AI will have its own consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And will be smarter than us at some
Mhm.
point. And, as one of the people on Diary of a CEO said, if you want to know what it's like to not be the highest and smartest and most intelligent life form on a planet, ask a chicken, you
Right.
know? So there's a lot of things we need to be aware of. And as we're building this thing, kind of get some safety nets in place. All the stories about, AI is blackmailing people or doing this or whatever, that's not made up. That's happening. So there's like anything else, there's these incredible upsides, but I think also some really we need to be careful. It's happening
Yeah.
faster than anybody ever thought.
Yeah, and I think it's happening faster than people expected. I
Uh-huh.
mean, the ability for, somebody that, wants to, say, steal from you, let's say, to create an image or a video or an email that makes you think something has happened that hasn't actually happened
Yeah,
is here already. I
totally.
mean, 6 months ago, you could tell the difference, but I'm telling you, it's very hard to tell the difference now. And, so how do you live in a society where you can't trust what you hear and what you see? I think that's where in-person, connection is gonna become even more valuable.
Well, they say the currency of the future is authenticity, right?
Mhm.
And like real human connection, right? Because even now you can tell if AI has written something, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Um, and maybe at some point it'll figure out how to not do that. But I just think that that what we're doing and the conversations we're having are that authenticity, are that like, keeping it human and figuring things out together and are going to be more and more important as AI becomes more and more prevalent. Um, but to that, and there's all those concerning sides that we just talked about. But on the flip side, Liz, how are you using AI in sort of fun and positive ways?
Yeah, so I will say that our company is a very quick adapter of technology. We're not slow on that. That's one of the beauties of being a smaller business. A couple of years ago, we started with an AI note taker. That's a game changer, especially when you're having meetings with
Yeah.
clients because it just picks up everything, and then at the end of the meeting, it condenses it down into a summary of what the action items are, and you can quickly send it out an email as a reminder to clients. You can log it into your CRM, your customer relationship management program, and connect it with your calendar. So if there's a follow up like 6 months from now, it'll it'll set that up. So so that is a very cool tool. Um, I think I had mentioned in a previous podcast that part of my job is to listen to earnings calls, both of companies that we invest in and some companies that we do not invest in because they give you a bellwether on the economy. And that is a tedious process to
Yeah.
listen to these presentations. But
Yeah, you said
but
it and I almost fell asleep.
I know, right? But incredibly important for what
I
we
know,
do.
I know. Hang on,
But
wait.
yes, I totally agree.
Or Excel spreadsheet. Work the way to sleep. Go ahead.
And we use we have an enterprise license, so we spent the money to have a license that does not retain our data and does not learn from our data. That's very
Wow.
important in what
Yeah.
we do. And then I can use that to um, give me the information for all of these earnings calls, like specific things I'm looking for. And it's just like can get it done in, seconds. Something that used to take me a couple of hours
Yep.
of my time. And I can look at the uh, fundamentals of a company very quickly now. And, so again, so for things like that, and we looked at a lot of different tools. I know some companies, I have a friend of mine that works for a large insurance company in Virginia. And she said that their finance department, they use the enterprise version of ChatGPT. And she said it used to take their finance department 2 weeks to deliver quarterly reports to the team on where they are in the company. And she said now they feed the data into ChatGPT, and they have those reports within, 10, 20 minutes.
Wow.
So, so then in my mind, of course, I think, okay, well, if you had three finance people, maybe you only need one, if you're using that
Yep.
tool, that becomes a very efficient way and a lot less expensive way uh, to get that information. And then, I use tools like Canva, for some fun design things, or uh, I listen to, for practical uses, I listen to a podcast called the Ideas Startup Podcast. And he brings in the developers of Gemini and Claude and um, ChatGPT and Grok, and they demo online. It's a podcast with a video component, so you can watch it, different use cases of how to use these. Like there's a company called Lindy, Lindy, and they have you can use their uh, they have a marketing AI where they use agentic AI. So let's say you have them connected to your calendar, and I've never used them. I just watched the demo of them. uh, they will see that you're flying out to California next week, and they will call your CRM, your customer relationship management tool, and see that you have three clients out there, and it will say, "Do to you want to meet these clients?"
Yeah.
And you say yes. And so it will reach out to the clients. It will set up a time to have dinner. It will make the reservation for dinner. It will confirm the reservation both with you and the client, and it will do all of these things that an admin would have done previously. Um, and it's all seamless in the background.
Wow. How does the client not know it's not like not a machine? Like if it's reaching out to the client, how does the client
It's
I
reaching
would
out
think that would be a very
via email.
personal thing. Was that?
So the email, the emails are so sophisticated. It's like, "Hey, Joe, I'm gonna be in Seattle next week. Wondering if you were available on Tuesday night for dinner." And Joe
Wow.
writes back, "Yeah, Tuesday night would be great. Super. Do you have a preference on a restaurant? If not, what about one of these 3?
But it doesn't know something about Joe's kids that you might know, or to
Yeah,
say,
well, it
"How's
would
so-and-so
it
doing?"
does if you've put it in the
Okay.
CRM.
Alright.
It
Wow.
would have all that information, and then, Open Table is an AI tool,
Sure.
so then you've got AI making a reservation with AI,
Yeah, yeah,
essentially,
yeah.
right? But
Whew.
that's like the level of, and when you say agentic, you just mean that's a task version of
Yeah,
AI.
like an
So
agent.
that's gonna use a task, and then what you do is you string together like 3 or 4 agentic AI tools.
Yeah.
And so this one does this task and hands it off to this one and to this one. And right now we're in the rudimentary stages of that. And it is so incredibly good right now that I cannot imagine what it's going to be like 2 years.
So are you leading that charge in the office, or,
Well, what's
who's doing all
interesting
the
is, no, I wouldn't say that I'm leading it, but I'm certainly learning as much as I can about it, but we've got in our office, uh, 2 millennials, and they are, like, all over it, right? So we have like, a 24-year-old and a 30-year-old, and um so they're probably, I would say, the leaders of it. But, but we're looking at all these different tools, and we're just a small business, and it's
Mhm.
already helping, our process. Um, and, I talked to somebody several months ago, CEO of a bank, or it was actually a friend of a CEO of a bank. And he said that that CEO hadn't answered an email in a year, that he allowed AI to answer all of his emails.
Wow. That
And now he reviewed them all.
okay, okay.
And, he if he needed to make a change to it, he would, and he said in 12 months, he never had to make a change.
Wow.
So every request
What are
from,
what are
"Hey."
the programs that are being, because here's where I'm, and maybe people, others can, get behind me on this. So I'm learning a lot about AI, and I'm using it in my practice, and trying to use it before it figures out how to use us, right? And like excited about it. But it's a little buckshot, right? There's so many
Mhm.
different programs and agents, and this one does that, and this one does that, and this one does. It's hard to like hone it in and say, I need to get behind these three and string these together or do it this way. How are you doing that, Liz? Like, because you could waste a lot of time looking at all kinds of AI that do all sorts of different things, especially when you get into my world, is very visual. There are a lot of different, this one
Sure.
gets ahead of that one today, and then that one's better tomorrow, and this one's, so um how are you figuring all that out, and where to put the attention and focus?
Well, one of the things that I do really like that podcast that I mentioned,
Yeah.
because they show demos,
Yeah.
live demos. So they will do something like within that hour, they will build a full website using Gemini, 3 Pro,
Oh, wow.
and how it works. And so you can watch it build in real time.
That's cool.
And so it's like a demo
Nice.
essentially of the technology. Um, so I really enjoy that podcast,
Yeah.
because it does introduce me to others.
So we'll put that in the notes, and I'll put Diary of a CEO, which is not
Yeah.
so much how to use, but how to understand some of the concerns and, things from the people who created um AI. Like, look, it's great, and we need to be careful, right? We really need to,
Mhm.
before it gets too far ahead of us, we need to figure out our safety nets. And then I want to reach out to our audience and say, what are the resources you're using to learn how to use AI effectively and efficiently, and because that's something I think we should share too. You
Yeah.
and I are sitting here saying we have the answers. I love some of the programs I'm using, again, in a very visual world. And I was listening to Bjark Ingels' sort of my generation's like Franklin Wright. Like he's one of the starchitects that we call them,
Mhm.
right? Um, so he said, and I think this encapsulates it so beautifully, and kind of scarily at the same time, is like, when he's the way when he's working with people in his office, he's like, it's kind of like creating the prompts. Like I'm prompting people, right, to do
Mhm.
this, and I have to explain that or change this and say, well, that's right, but try this over here. And he's like, now I'm doing that with the machine, and it
Right.
sort of collapses years, right,
Mhm.
of like what I had to learn and how to do that with people, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So it doesn't necessarily take over the originality and the thought process or what you might create as an individual, because there's things that AI comes up with that if you don't have an eye, like that doesn't work or whatever. But regardless, like the human originality doesn't go away. It's just the prompt, it's the way you prompt to get to the answers, and you have to have the experience to get to those results. But he's saying, I don't necessarily, I can do it differently, right? I still, and I think he would agree. I'm not putting words in his mouth. I still think there's nothing like having that human interaction and because there's originality that comes out of that too, right? Like that. But
I
I
think
thought it was a very interesting way to say it. Like when you're working with people, it's a different way of prompting, right?
well, I think that that's
Numbers for
true.
sure.
I do think that one of the things we have to be careful of, and, I read a, tweet, whatever, or I don't know what you call it now that it's X, but on what used to be Twitter, now it's called X,
Yeah.
um, for a, Silicon Valley CEO, and he was interviewing a recent college grad out of Stanford, and this guy graduated top of his class, and they were having their interview over lunch. And the CEO was saying that this college grad could, like, barely put 2 sentences together, and it was just bizarre. And finally, towards the end of the lunch, he said, "Are you okay?" And the college grad said, "I am. I'm so sorry. I am so used to using artificial intelligence that I'm having trouble communicating, that, like, basic conversation skills." And the CEO pondered that when we introduced GPS as a mapping tool and put it in every car, it was a great um, tool to allow people to navigate their way from point A to point B. But it also took away people's ability to navigate on their own or to read a map, a skill set that, we all grew up
Mhm.
learning.
Absolutely.
And so his question was, if we use AI to think for us, will will we as a race, the human race, lose
Use
our
it or
ability?
lose it. Yeah. It's a muscle. You have to work it out, right?
Exactly, exactly.
And
And so
that's
to
the
your
neural network. Like our brain is a neural network, just like AI is a neural network. And it makes more connections when you're learning something new and when you're using it. So if you're not, it atrophies.
right.
And
And
that's
so to your point, we're going to have to, it's a balance, right? It is a tool that can be very useful for a wide variety of applications, but we don't want it to replace human intelligence.
no. And I do think we need to be careful because it's getting ahead of us, and there's all this competition and money sometimes then jumps over regulation and common sense, and we need to put those guardrails back up, right?
Yeah. I
uh,
mean, the horse is out of the barn. So AI,
yeah,
and so we
I
do have
think
to, like, adapt to it, but we also need to be mindful that um not to over rely on it. Um
yeah. And then one, and maybe we can leave it at this because it brings back to the importance of nurturing, and it brings it back to the importance of what we do in any part of our lives. But one of the podcast I mentioned, one of I think it was the godfather of AI said, you're training AI every day in how you interact with it. And he thinks this is one person's opinion that, you know, if you look at evolution throughout time, it's the nurturing. The mother has a natural instinct to protect a child, right? It's this nurturing instinct that sort of evolution has baked in, so that mother would give his life for a child, right? That we should teach AI to be nurturing, like,
Mhm.
and motherly, and like a parent, loving a child, like in the way we interact with it, and the way we teach it to interact with others, and the sort of moral compass we help it set just by our interactions with it. And I'm paraphrasing. You should go listen to the podcast, but it's that idea, which makes sense, like that if it's more nurturing than about power, right? And about that could be one way to have it work more with us than against us.
Well, I always think about, you and I are close to the same age, and there was a movie that I grew up with called War Games, right? With
Yeah.
Matthew Broderick. And, at the end, he has to teach the computer through something simple like tic-tac-toe that you can't win,
Yeah.
right? So don't start nuclear war, um, because
Right.
nobody wins.
Nobody
And,
wins.
there was that sort of, parent-child teaching moment.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
it
I
is.
think that's where we're headed.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
what a great conversation. And just not even the tip of the iceberg. I mean,
mm,
AI is going to be a constant conversation, I think. And it'd be interesting a year from now to see how this conversation evolved.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. To be
Yeah.
continued.
To be
That's
continued. Let's hopefully be here in another year to talk about it, and see not just what's happened with AI, but what's happened in our community too. Like this little
sounds great.
farming community. So I'm not sure if that was a spark short once again.
The spark shorter.
A spark short, spark medium, spark light. I don't know. But it was fun. So thanks as always,
Absolutely.
Liz, and looking forward to our next conversation too.
Sounds great. Thanks, Michelle.